This is a D6 Generation Pip. Bite-sized content for a busy gamer. Sometimes featuring Craig, sometimes featuring Russ.
Hey, what about me?
Oh yeah, and sometimes featuring Raef, Hollywood Granger.
All right, hey, listeners, welcome back. Raef Hollywood Granger here. You're listening to the Hollywood Minute Part 2 with Ryan Morency, and we're going to wrap up our discussion of open world sandbox survival games, and then we're going to move into the MMO known as Final Fantasy XIV, because Ryan and I are also both playing that. We have some interesting observations on that, I think. So I think where we were talking about, where we're wrapping it up, was the ability to port characters over. That I'll continue V Rising in my own little world, if or when the game allows me to have somebody come in and help me kill a boss. I think much like you can do in Core Keeper, because it is a good game. And I wanted to mention too, in segment 1, what I really liked was, I would call it like building light. I'm not a huge base builder, and what I loved about it was like, build a wall, boom, all you needed was stone. You build a wall, it's got a hole for a window. It wasn't fiddly, it was super easy to do, and you could put 8 different windows in there once you had the tech. So I just really loved the simplicity of both the materials needed and the ability. Like, that was the best base building experience for me ever.
I 100% agree. And yeah, and I love building, right? Like,
that's why I'm asking.
I love the building. Like, I play Minecraft with my son, and I enjoy that aspect of the game where you have to put together like every single tiny block of that. And even Ark, right? Like, you might have to build 4 wall panels or something like that. I liked the simplicity of V Rising, where they took a lot of the excess building out to streamline it, but the end product still looked really cool. You could still really customize it, right? So like, my castle didn't look like your castle. No. I could put different wall textures on it, different floor textures on it, but it wasn't such a encumbering system that somebody who doesn't like building wouldn't find it fun to build a castle, right? Because building a castle was a huge part of that game, right? Like, you had your castle, different rooms gave you different bonuses for the machines. So I think they made building perfect for the entry-level survival genre type of person.
And that's why I want to go back, actually, is I enjoyed the base building so much that if we ever go back to my own server, but I'm afraid that I'll get gated by the monsters. But that's why I was saying that about being allowed to have somebody come in just for the base building component of it. I enjoyed that. Yeah,
it was really fun. It was surprising how enjoyable it was.
Now, here's something that's weird for me. I don't know if it's weird for you. So I don't particularly enjoy base building in survival games. Again, I don't know why, but I'll play Prison Architect till the cows come home, so I like sim builders. So I don't understand why there's a difference, or what's going on there, or maybe it's theme, I don't know. I can't figure it out.
I think, so like, your historical context for survival games is like Ark, right? And I think with Ark, right, you can build a base. You can build up whatever you want. There's no real purpose to that base other than to keep the dinosaurs away from your stuff, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
And I think with V Rising, the building served a very specific purpose, right? Like, it kept the sunlight out and stuff like that, similar to Ark, but like, the way you designed your castle and the way you laid it out would give you bonuses. So like, there was an actual purpose to building your castle in a way that made sense, where Ark, it's kind of like, I'm going to put a bunch of walls, a bunch of doors. I could make it look really cool, but it didn't really, like, whether I built a stone wall versus like metal walls, it was really just look and feel type stuff. There wasn't a mechanic that drove me wanting to spend time putting that effort into building, right? So I think that might be why, like, Prison Architect, right? Like, the layout, and I haven't played it, I'm guessing the layout of the prison determines how well the prison operates, or right? Like, so there's a purpose to the building, right? Like, you wouldn't want to put like the kitchen next to the toilets, because then the prisoners might revolt because their food smells bad, or something, right?
That's like, kind of like, that could happen. Or like, what would happen is, famously with the showers, if you didn't have enough drains, or the drains weren't in the right places, the water would back up and all your prisoners would get really angry. and stab guards. So, because in that game you don't control the people. You just build the room, and then the people are their own little automatons that like flow around, and you can see them flowing, and they have little, and you can tell they're angry because they'll have little angry word bubbles above their head. And I don't want to go too far down with that game, but what that game's neat is then you need the psychologist. You have to unlock the psychologist as like a prison employee to be able to see what the word bubbles are.
Oh, got it.
And you can start to get reports on what the prisoners are angry about.
Right. That's interesting. But yes, right. Like, but building serves a purpose, right? And so I think
building serves a purpose. And the stuff you put in, like, oh, you need a drain. It's not just for aesthetics.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, yep. So anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. All right. Let's segue over to Final Fantasy XIV. And so switching gears, this is an MMO. And why I wanted to talk to Ryan about it is in the WoW community, much of there was a little bit of an issue with like a frat boy culture going on over there at Blizzard, and some employment opportunity claims and stuff going on. And so they've properly so cleaned up some house. But when people did that, a lot of WoW players were like, oh, I'm going to go play Final Fantasy XIV. Now, Final Fantasy XIV players are like, hey, this is what we've been trying to tell you since day one. This is an awesome game. There's a lot of loyal Final Fantasy XIV players. So I thought we would just talk about the game, what it's like, and the community, and try not to do any spoilers. If we do spoilers, I'll give a warning and you can turn the podcast off. But the part I wanted to talk about, Ryan, was, so I'm leveling my character from 1 to 60, and I was at the 50th level mark. Mm-hmm. And I just found this story that everybody raves about so grueling. And the little characters in there, they're called Lalafels, right? The little Lalafels.
Yeah.
Like, I now know why people hate gnomes and WoW. Like, I play gnomes and dwarves all the time and WoW, and everybody makes fun of it when I play a gnome, and I'm like, gnomes are awesome. But I just cannot stand the like Lalafell character. I don't like what they look. They have these dumb animations and these stupid voices. And I was like calling Ryan, I'm like level 51, and he's like, just keep going. The story's going to get better. Just keep going. And I'm like, it's killing me. So, but I did go all the way through. Your advice was good. And yeah, it's one of those stories that I now see, and I'm only level 60. Supposedly the story gets even better, 60 to 90 you can go, right? In Final Fantasy.
Yep.
I can see why people talk about it. And what it reminds me of is, I think it'll be forever in my gaming memory. Like System Shock 2 is always in my gaming memory. Playing BioShock 2, I think it was, or 3, where you're underwater. You do the underwater one.
Could have been 1 or 2. I think they were all underwater except for like the third one. I think it was up in the air or something.
But were they both underwater? Yeah. So just Rapture, coming back to Rapture, like that'll always be in my memory. And so now this story. And maybe we do need to have spoilers to be able to talk about it. But so I just wondered, how did you keep going, or what do you like about the game? Or
Yeah. So full disclosure, right? Final Fantasy has been around for a very long time. It's been around as long as WoW. They had a crisis of conscience at some point. They took all the servers down because the game was bad, and they rebuilt the entire thing, not necessarily from the ground up, but like they redid the combat, they redid a ton of stuff. So then the game re-released, and that game, when it first came out, was called A Realm Reborn. So it was Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. That is what's in the game from levels 1. It was 1 to 50 at first, right? Then they did a small content push and they extended the level cap, I think. And I apologize if I'm getting the history wrong. I didn't pre-research this before this conversation, but I'm giving you broad strokes. Then from 50 to 60 was kind of like tacked on there at the end, and they still kind of had that as like A Realm Reborn. Now, everybody, because the game's been out for a while, right? That's Realm Reborn at the beginning. Then from like 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, they've released expansion content, and they took feedback from the Realm Reborn stuff. They listened to their player base, and they made some of the best MMO expansion content that's out there. I think a lot of people would argue maybe like Elder Scrolls Online and Final Fantasy have some of the best quest content for a game. Now, Final Fantasy, so A Realm Reborn came out a long time ago. It's been around for a long time. And when everybody talks about Final Fantasy and they say, it's got the best story ever, and then there's an asterisk and they say, Final Fantasy had the best story ever after you get to the expansion content, because Realm Reborn is a slog, right? And so it's not horrible. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, and so I would say, right, like, first off, if you get into an MMO and you skip every single piece of quest text, you couldn't be bothered to care about the quest. You don't want to listen to it. You don't care about the environment, the world, the story. You will not enjoy Final Fantasy. I'm talking to you, Greg. So, right, like, we've got a friend, Greg. He's like me. He plays a lot of games, loves MMOs. He jumped in the same time I did. He ignored every single piece of quest text, couldn't be bothered with it. And I think by level 50, he said, forget it, I'm out. Which makes sense, right? The game's draw is the story, it's the world, it's the environment, it's the character building, it's that type of stuff, right? Like, the combat, somewhat similar. It's like WoW Plus, I guess, right? Like, it's not mindlessly pushing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in different orders. It's, you've got some rotations. There's, like, you know, moving in and out of combat. The combat's a little more complicated. It's not super complicated, but, like, it is somewhat complicated. So there's a little bit more there on the combat side, but the draw for Final Fantasy is the story, the environment, and stuff like that. To get through that first 60 levels, kind of a pain, and it takes a little while. And, like, that's when we all took a break and went to V Rising for a little bit, because we beelined 60 levels of content, which I think took us about a month and a half, maybe 2 months to get through, maybe longer. I don't remember how long I've been playing. But all of that, like, honestly, I could have thrown away the first 50 levels and picked it up from 50 and moved on from there, and I would have been totally fine, right? So after you get through, so anyway, for me to recommend this game, I would say you've got to like stories and MMOs, and you got to be able to get into a fantasy world. And if you can't, then don't play this game. I won't recommend it to you. If you do enjoy those things, then I'm going to say, I will recommend this game to you, as long as you have the patience and know that the first 50 levels, you're going to be learning the mechanics. They feed you systems in the game along the way. So it's also, like, I consider 1 through 50 like a tutorial, right? Tutorial. Like, you go through, like, you start at level 10, first of all. So you don't even do 1 through 10 anymore. They removed that part of the game. So you start at level, is that right?
I think that's right.
Maybe I'm thinking.
Oh, no, we're thinking about the other one.
I might be thinking of Lost Ark, one of the other games we played right before that. But sorry, anyway, like, levels 1 through 10, right? It's like tutorial content. 10 through 20, they might introduce the auction house and the marketplace. And, oh, here's, like, mounts. And then, oh, hey, here's the big gold saucer casino area where you can get cosmetic items. And so, like, you kind of get introduced to all these different systems from 1 to 50. And the storyline, frankly, in my opinion, was throwaway. The voiceovers were mediocre. The acting was mediocre. The character animations were a little stiff. Still good, but not fantastic, amazing. So, like, if I didn't have the context of, oh, this game is amazing and the storyline's the best I've ever played in an MMO, if they didn't then say, once you get to the expansion content in italics, I probably would have dumped the game, right? But I stuck with it, got through that Realm Reborn content, and now I see what everybody's talking about. It's an amazing story. There's political intrigue, there's twists and turns in the storyline, there's betrayals, there's all this other stuff. I think the only thing the game doesn't have is, like, a romance option for your character, which makes sense the way that the game is built, right? Like, you've got a silent protagonist that doesn't actually speak out loud. They kind of, like, do this, and then the other receiving character's like, oh, so when you say blah 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 blah, you know, like, the characters speak for you, right? So but anyway, right, like, a really, really good story once you breach that wall of Realm Reborn. And for me, it was a switch. Like, it wasn't like they gradually built up to some cool story stuff, but it was like there was a pivotal moment in there. Won't mention it because of spoilers, right? But, like, there's a moment where then the storyline just takes a turn for the best. You start caring about characters. They redo when you get to the expansion content, like, literally the credits roll. And then right after that, you get into a quest, you talk to some guys, and you realize all the voiceovers have been redone. They even put some storyline hooks in there where Tataru, who's kind of like I don't know, the secretary of the hero group all of a sudden is dabbling in clothing crafting. And so now she's making new clothing for all the characters. So not only do the characters get new voiceovers, they get new looks, they get new attitudes, they get new backstories. Like you didn't really know the motivation behind a lot of these characters from Realm Reborn. We talked about Alphino, who's a character that you're with pretty much literally from the opening scene in the show, right? Like he's in the wagon riding with you, like in Skyrim.
Oh, I forgot
And
that.
yeah, and so like along the way, I didn't care about him. I thought he was whiny.
Whiny,
I
yep.
didn't like his voiceover. I didn't understand where he came from, what his motivation was. He was just this character that kind of got dropped in your lap. You didn't know really where he was from, what he did, blah,
Yep.
blah, blah. The expansion content started. He got a ton of backstory. I felt for the character. I liked the voiceover. He was more mature. I resonated with him a little bit more. Like everything just kind of clicked. So I agree. Final Fantasy has some of the best storylines in an MMO. I thought WoW was very throwaway. Like, I don't know that I read quest text past the Barons in WoW. There's been plenty of other games that are very similar to that. MMOs are not known for their stories. They're known for getting a lot of people together, running dungeons, getting loot, stuff like that, but they're not really known for their stories. And so Elder Scrolls Online, Final Fantasy, two MMOs that are meant to be story-driven,
meant to be
games.
Watched as like a single player RPG, but it's multiplayer. Yeah, I want to say if you're the type of player I am, which is maybe the case because you wouldn't like listening to the Hollywood Minute because it would bore the heck out of you otherwise. So I tend to be speaking to the people who think the way I think or like the games that I like. At least that's what people write in and what they say. And by the way, love to hear thoughts, comments. Hey, keep doing more stuff like this. Raef, would love to hear your thoughts on that. You can email me at hollywood@the d6generation.com.
Don't bring that Ryan guy back for any more interviews.
That's right. Yeah. I want to say that like when I play WoW, I have no idea who the characters are.
Yeah.
I do read the text because I'm trying to immerse. I don't have any idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm the little version of my character going through the world, killing some wolves and getting the pelts and then make the thing. And it's almost like calming solitaire. And then when I want to go do a dungeon, then I can group up. And that's why I like retail, because if I want to just go poof, do a dungeon, I can do dungeon. If I have to work my way through it, then I can work my way through it. So I found Final Fantasy a little bit frustrating, almost like, gosh, now they're stuffing another character into this mix. Like, who's this person and why do I care? All the way up to like the last two levels, and I think at some point we're just going to go spoilers, but they just like another story hook and another story hook and another story hook. And so last night I finished the story hook and I think I either texted you or Discord messaged you and I'm like, what the F? I'm like, now there's a complete new story hook. And you were like, just hang in there. I promise you they'll all wrap it up. And they did.
Yep.
And they did. And it was worth it. And I now see why everybody was doing it. But man, along the way, I almost was like, just leave me alone with all these stupid characters.
Yeah.
And let me play the game. But then that would just be a WoW clone. And what fun is that? And I can't wait to get into for Final Fantasy because it has all the things that I like, which is player housing. I mean, there's some issues with that right now from what I heard, but player housing and then crafting stupid stuff like furniture for the playing housing. I love crap like that.
Yep.
It has cooking, a really deep cooking menu. It's a deep crafting menu. I haven't even scratched the surface of that.
Yep.
The animations are cool. I'm not 100% sold on the art style, although after the expansion, I must be either getting used to it, but I do like that I'm playing a healer class, which I do like the animations of my class. And thankfully, it's one of the most easy healers. So it's really just 1, 2, 3, 4 different rotations. And I'm actually, so far, I'm either pretty good at healing or, which is the latter is what I think it is, everybody's super geared. So like, the tanks could be good and the DPS is super good. Like towards the end, some of that 15-person content, the tank didn't even take any damage, like literally took no damage. And he must have been bubbled by somebody else or something. But anyway, so I can't wait to I feel like now that I hit level 60, I can breathe a little and start to explore some of the other things.
Yeah, there is that. And like the perk of that game being around forever, there's a ton of systems. Like they literally have an entire casino and it's all virtual currency and stuff like that, but it's where you can go to you can go race, it's like horse racing. You can bet on chocoboos or and a bunch of other stuff. And there's a whole currency that's just specific for the gold saucer, and you can get cosmetics that you can only find at the gold saucer, right? And that's just a little system by itself, completely frivolous. It's just for cosmetic things like clothing and hats and stuff, but people spend a ton of time there. And then there's all the trade skill stuff there. So anyway, right, there's a ton of side activity things that you can do in that game, which that's the draw for people. And the cool thing about Final Fantasy that we should mention too is the difference between WoW and a lot of other games is WoW, if you want to play a healer, that's one character. If you want to play a tank, that's another character. If you want to play a rogue, that's another character. Whereas with Final Fantasy, it's one character, and you can change the job or the class of that character. So my one person, Bob, can be a healer, and then I could swap the gear out and I could be a tank, or I could swap the gear out and I can be a trade skiller. And also to note, crafting in most MMOs is a tacked on thing. I'm a warrior that also can craft armor. But in this game, armor crafting is a job. It's a class by itself. You level that job from level 1 to 90 by itself, right? And so don't think of trade skilling it. You could actually play this game, I don't know that that's true. You might not be able to actually play the game and just do trade skills. I think you have to do a combat class to get through the storyline to progress and things like that. But trade skilling is very much something that you play and do just on its own, separate from your combat class stuff. The crafting has its own rotation and combat rotation. You use skills while you're crafting to increase the quality of the product, and then increase the progress of the product. And then, I get to buff myself in the middle of making this stool so I can make it better, or whatever that looks like, right? So the systems are very well developed. There's a lot of stuff to do in the game.
I think the other thing, and it's 100,000 podcasts talk about this, is the community difference that I've noticed too.
Huge.
And I guess what I'm amazed at is the sort of the power of the social experiment known as community. And so, for example, you know this, Ryan, but others listening might not. If I'm playing classic WoW, and which even has a better community than retail, right?
Sure.
And I'm the tank, and I don't quite know what I'm doing because I'm a sprout. That's a FFX. That's a Final Fantasy XIV term, and I kind of mess it up. You will get crap from the other players. The other players are sort of I need to do this content. It's they're in a rush, and you need to know your job, and you don't know your job, and you're making my experience bad. You'll get some griping. Yep. In retail, they'll yell at you, ban you, kick you out, swear at you. It's awful. There's been times when I want to cry, somebody, some strange 14-year-old, I assume, is yelling at me in the game. And oh my gosh, Final Fantasy is, you mess up there and they're like, oh, hey there. Gosh, I mess up all the time myself. And what you may not know is you want to cast this spell. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so sorry. Because I'm coming from WoW, where I'm like, oh, I must be. And they're like, oh my gosh, don't even worry about it. And make sure you watch all the cinematics. It's to a T. I don't want to jinx myself, but I've literally never had any. I've been in 30 dungeons now as a healer. So I don't know what I'm doing in half of them. I'm standing in the poo half of the time, and not one person has shrieked out in anger. Here's what I don't understand. Are they starting to shriek out and the game snipes their chat and it goes away? It's got to be people coming over from WoW. So how is it occurring that this angry WoW player isn't yelling?
I think right, I think monkey see monkey do, groups of people, right? So WoW started off and they made it super accessible. So 14-year-olds were playing, kids were playing. They realized they could say whatever the heck they want, and their parents couldn't yell at them because they couldn't hear them. So, right, and WoW kind of was really probably the first mainstream MMO, right? There was EverQuest, there was Anarchy Online, there was a bunch of MMOs that came before WoW, but WoW was the first one that kind of similar to like the part 1 of this podcast. Make sure you listen to that, by the way, plug, and don't forget to smash like and subscribe. But they WoW made it accessible for people, similar to Dungeons and Dragons now being acceptable in social society. WoW made MMO, nerding out, playing a video game, acceptable in social society, in my opinion. So I think WoW, right? You get a bunch of people that hadn't really been in online video games. They're now getting into this online universe. It was, I think, MySpace was around when WoW was coming out, not Facebook, right? So a lot of people realized the anonymity of the internet let them do and say whatever they wanted with very little consequence. And so WoW has in my opinion, probably one of the more toxic communities in the video game space, because it's been a holdover from when it first came out. Final Fantasy came out a little bit later. It wasn't as super popular as WoW when it first came out. It flopped when it kind of first came out. So a lot of people left, came back. And I think because a lot of people were already playing WoW, it was very mainstream. There was a big population there. You had the more mature gamers that didn't want to listen to the nonsense from WoW. They came over to Final Fantasy, built a better community. And then, right, like when you have a community of not nice people and you come into that community, you can see pretty quickly, I can behave however I want. When you have a community of nice people and you're a maybe not nice person and you come in and you realize, oh, hey, everybody's being super nice and kind to everybody and being extra patient, I guess there's really not a space for me to be a jerk here. And I'll either move on to another game or I'll learn to not be a jerk. And so I think because the community's lasted for so long and it's been a positive community, you might have those toxic people come and go, but the voices aren't as loud. You don't hear them as often. And so you just don't see it as much. But I agree.
I want to even say, now that you're saying that, I have a memory of, it wasn't me, it was against the tank. I'm a healer in this game, and somebody was on the edge of snarky. Like in WoW, it would have been tame, right?
Right.
And I want to say 2 people out of the 5 people group were like, hey, he's new, he's learning his way. We don't do that here, type of thing.
Yep.
And that person shut up.
That down. Yep.
They shut up. Now, but here's what I still don't understand. You and I've met trolls and stuff. Like, you can say that in WoW. I'd be like, hey man, come on. We're all just going to be like, shut the F up. You dweeb. You know what I mean? It's like, they're not, why does that text message silence them? I wondered if they literally got silenced, or if the group leader was able to click a button and be like, you're ignored, or I just was just amazed that the person then shut up after that.
Yeah. I don't know. Hard to say. Again, that might just be like, yeah, and again, right,
just
like
peer pressure, I guess.
They've probably run 50 dungeons and they've been told, hey, lay off 5 times already. So maybe that's just like, oh, okay, whatever. It's just not worth it. And plus, trolls are trolls because they get a rise out of people. And when you don't get a rise out of somebody, it's like, it's that whole thing, right? Like, you tell your kids, right? Like, well, if you don't let them see it bothers you, they'll not do it again. But if they know it bothers you, they're going to keep pushing that button. And so.
Yeah. And of course, I want to make the disclaimer that not everybody I met in WoW, I met some super great strangers in WoW and super great people. But when you hear podcasters and influencers and whatever talking about the community difference, just little old me, I wanted to say, like, it's a stark contrast. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you've ever wanted to dabble in an MMO and you're like me and you don't know the first thing and how to get going or whatever, and it's intimidating, you know, have a Ryan to be able to call up and be like, I don't understand, or, you know, watch a bunch of YouTube videos, because that game is deep. Like, you jump into the world and there's so many quests, there's so many things. It's like, wow, where to start? But the people even if you know nobody, the people in the game will guide you if you just ask, and they're super nice, and they don't seem to be annoyed. They seem to take pleasure out of the fact to be like, oh yeah, here's what you do. Yeah. You know, the closest I came to somebody kind of griping was, there's a sprint mechanic, as you know, in the game. And so we're in a dungeon and the tank's like taking off, and I'm like, whoa, where is he going? And I'm not sprinting because I didn't think of it, because I'm a WoW player. You don't sprint. Right. And you know, and then he gets out of my sight lines, or she, and I'm like, why does they keep doing that? I can't heal them. But then someone else just was like, hey, don't forget the sprint button. And I'm like, oh, that's right. So yeah, it's
easy to do, but I think everybody's been there. They've made those same mistakes. You know, they've all come from possibly similar experiences. Like, you know, whatever that looks like. So yeah, I'd say, if for somebody, if you've never played an MMO, Final Fantasy is probably a little too complicated for your first dip in the pool.
Yeah.
I mean, if if you've got a Ryan, somebody that can take you under their wing and show you the ropes and teach you those things. I try to think back to when I started MMOs, but that was like EverQuest. I'm really old. I mean, I kind of grew up around games, so like it came easy to me, but for somebody just starting out, it's not the most accessible game either. The combat is tougher, and that's why WoW is still today somewhat popular, because it's easy. You can play that game, you can be sorry, let me back that up. You can not be paying attention. You can watch a TV show while you play and still probably be successful. Like, you can half pay attention to WoW and still do what you need to do.
Yep.
Final Fantasy, not like that.
Not like that. No.
Yep.
All right, let's end this with spoilers. So give a big spoiler alert. If anybody out there, we're going to talk about what happens in the story. So if anybody out there wants to do the story and have an experience of it, which I do recommend, like, you might not want to listen to the spoiler if you think you want to hear the story. Then just turn the podcast off now. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you up on the next one, but I do want to spend some time talking about it. So if you want to hear that.
And to elaborate on that quickly too, we're not going all the way to the end game with spoilers, because we're not there yet. We're really just going to spoil the end of Realm Reborn and the beginning of Heaven's Ward, which is the first expansion content. So if you're already past that, you're not going to get spoiled by anything.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Here's my beef that I had playing it last night, because you asked me how it went. So there were a lot of cutscenes that just played one after the other. And that I kind of enjoyed that, because it was like watching a movie.
Right.
But I started at like 6 p.m. and I kind of grinded a whole level basically all the way. And I literally was getting like antsy, like in my chair, my back was sore, and I'm like, oh my God, can they just get to the point? And where I got frustrated is I could tell the story was building. This was all the stuff before the Crystal Tower, right? What the F with the Crystal Tower? I don't feel like that had to be in there at all.
Think about it before the expansions came out. You just hit end game. The Crystal Tower is your raid instance. That's what it's there for.
Oh.
Once the expansion came out, they put more content at the end of the Crystal Tower. But before that expansion came out, that was endgame, right? Like, you were running Crystal Tower, you were raiding in there, you were getting gear from there, you were rerunning the instances to get the tokens to unlock more gear. Like, so you got to the end of the first story, and they made you do the 3 required versions of the Crystal Tower to then go into the expansion content, because there were certain things that took place in the storyline in the Crystal Tower that you needed to know to make sense at the beginning of the next expansion content.
I don't think so, because to me, the Crystal Tower, where those 2 twin clones come in, the one guy with the one green eye and the one red eye, and he's part royal blood or something. And then there's the Crystal Tower, and we got to shut down the Crystal Tower. So we do shut down the Crystal Tower. And then Nero pops out of somewhere, and he's kind of redeemed. And I didn't even remember he was even in the story. You could have told me he was in Lost Ark, and I would have believed you. And then, and I don't know. And now we're in, is it Isengard? Ishgard?
Ishgard. Ishgard is the new place
and I
residing.
feel like, but at least you've explained it that was the raid. Now that makes total sense.
That was the raid, but it was also the first time, and it plays out through the rest of the storyline, but it's the first time that you get introduced to the Allagans, which were, they came before, right? Like, we don't know how long ago, could have been eons ago. They're like what left all this technology around the world that's enabling different things to take place. It explains either, however you pronounce it, which is like the horse in this game.
I didn't catch all that it was
so there was a lot of stuff that they explained there, like the Allagan technology and how that's how they built the Ultima weapon. And in order to like defeat the Ultima weapon or build something to go against it, we need to either learn from this technology or like shut it down because the rest of the world shouldn't have it because it's like ultimate power. So there was some stuff hidden in there, but again, you were probably getting towards the end, you were clicking through the text really fast. And yeah, exactly. So like there were tidbits in there that kind of explain a little bit of what's coming next, but it's background information too.
Okay.
So.
And it's not the game's fault that I'm coming to it 15 years late, but you know, the raids at that point in time, when I'm joining them, they're really just continuations of the cinematics because I'm not playing the raid. I'm not beating any bosses. Everybody's so uber powered and uber powerful. I'm not doing any of the mechanic. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just in there running behind a bunch of people, clicking a heal every now and again, unlike the random DPSer that looks like he's going to die. Do you know? Did you have that same experience, or did you pay, or you're a DPS class, so you might not have, but did you notice like the tank took no damage? How was that possible? And I clicked a little bubble and it said he had a shield on him. I'm like, who gives him that?
If it was a pally, they have like 3 bubbles they can do on themselves or something like that. Plus there's other classes that put shields up. Heck, I'm a DPS monk and I can put up a buff that reduces damage by like 20% for the whole group and increases healing for 30, or like everybody's got toolkits. Right. And as long as everybody's somewhat paying attention, right? If you've got, and this is like, I think you're talking about the 8-man dungeons, right? As opposed to the 4-man standard rate dungeons.
Well, these were 15 or 20.
Oh, those were the big ones, right? Yeah. So, right. Like if you have like half of the people in there that know what they're doing and they're popping their buffs, they're popping their bubbles, they're popping the shields for the whole team. Yeah, it is somewhat easy mode because everybody already knows the fights and stuff like that. But back when, and plus they might be overgeared for it too, because there's the whole dungeon roulette thing, right? And so they encourage the way that the game is built, right? It's got a huge population, but it's been out for so long, a lot of people are at end game. And so in order to run these dungeons that are maybe in the middle of the game, they encourage people that are at the end game to do what's called a dungeon roulette. And so what you do is down here in the mid game, you queue up for all these dungeons, but there might not be people playing at level 50 when you're playing, right? And so what they do is they take these people that are level 90 and they say, hey, if you run this daily dungeon roulette, which randomly picks a dungeon out of the air and then you run it, you get like a bunch of stuff and you get a bunch of money. It's a good way to, it's like one of those checklist items you want to do every day when you hit end game because you get a bunch of stuff for it that you need. But that's how they populate the dungeon finder, because then they scale you down from level 90 to 50 so you can run all those previous dungeons. So you still have all of the gear and the knowledge of what happens at end game. So you know that character inside and out. You're really good at it. You've probably run the hard, the extreme, the epic, and the other version of this one specific dungeon many times before. So it's not so much that people are necessarily overgeared or higher level because they're all getting scaled down, but they have the knowledge of the fight, right? Like, and a lot of the mechanics are pretty much the same. Like you might have the mechanic of like, you have to hide behind this boulder when the guy enrages and does this big AoE blast. And that might happen in 5 different fights and you learn the signs, you know what's going to happen, and you just automatically do those things. And in a 24-man raid, you can have 5 people dirt napping on the floor and it doesn't matter. You're still going to succeed.
Oh yeah.
Right?
I, as the healer, dirt napped a couple, 3 times. Yeah. Like I knew, my health bar would go to full to 0. I'm like, oh, I missed some major mechanic. I was supposed to run somewhere,
Right. Yep.
But again, nobody gets mad, and so that's cool. Do you know is there a class out there that you're aware of that does a res? Does it? I have a res, but my res takes
all the healers. Okay. I think all the healers get a res, sort of res.
All right. What else did I want to say? So yeah, I was a little bit like, what's with these red-eyed clones? But it ends. It's really cool ending with the political intrigue and the betrayals, and I'm assuming those characters all died. I'm even trying not to spoil it for the spoilers, but because I don't think we need to go into those details. So, sorry, some car just buzzed by. My daughter's out there mowing. I'll make sure she's out of the way. But so I logged off being like tired, a little bit frustrated, being like, this game, I could see why people like it, but I don't know if it's for me. But then I woke up this morning, I'm like, I want to see what the next part is.
You want to know what happens next, right?
What happens next.
You're at they did a bunch of stuff and things happened, right? Like people died, things took place, but now you're getting into the cool part where like you learn why Alphino is the way he is, where his background came from. You start relating to him as a character, and he grows in the story. And then they bring back other people, and that same thing happens. Like you learn a little bit more about this person and a little bit more about this person, and you care about the story. They do a bunch of emotional stuff. Like I don't think there's a quest line. You're helping out this one person thing character, and like their parents died. And they just found out and they got all super upset. And in Final Fantasy, like you can use your emotions and your fear to like summon a primal, and that's how like the Ascians are manipulating these beast tribes. They're like, oh, watch out for those humans, they're gonna like take over all your territory and kill you all, and and stuff like that. And so they get all upset and they pray to their god, and then that god gets summoned, and then you've got to fight that god and beat him up because they could devastate the entire planet. And so that ended up happening where this one beast tribe thought they were going to summon a primal, but then you walk in with this kid that's showing you just like, hey, where all this stuff is taking place. Then the kid finds out that this guy over here killed his parents and they're just laying there dead over on the floor. He gets super pissed off, runs over, and because all the crystals are in there that are used to summon the primal, he accidentally summons the primal because he's like, wake up, mom and dad, wake up. And he starts screaming and yelling and crying, and then all of a sudden the primal summons because of his extra emotions and stuff like that. And there was never a time in Realm Reborn from 0 to 60 was I emotionally involved in anything, but as a parent, like that one like struck home a little bit. I was like, oh, little kid,
I've
like
heard
lost his parents and stuff. And so they do a great job at tugging on emotions and heartstrings and stuff
I even
like
felt that with the credits rolling at a Realm Reborn. They showed some
right.
Credits, the right kind of music, characters hugging that are now gone, or we're suspecting they're gone.
Yeah.
So the Ascians, are they like from another planet or something, and they're trying to take over this planet?
Still a little bit TBD. I think it might, I suspect, and I don't have any confirmation, I think they could be the Allagans that potentially like evolved into the Ascians, or this is going to be a spoiler for you, but we've just found out that there's other dimensions or alternate worlds, stuff like that, which I think that's how Final Fantasy does their whole universe. I think, and that's how they do like crossover events between their games. So like Final Fantasy VII will meet up with your character in Final Fantasy XIV because they're coming from alternate dimensions. So I think like each game is its own like little dimension or something. I don't know. It could be, but anyway, I think Ascians are either from another dimension or they're some old race that evolved, because the Ascian itself is not a person. It's the spirit that latches on. They're parasites. They latch onto another person and they take them over as a host, and then they have all their powers and stuff like that.
I didn't know that.
So they're like a spiritual being, which is why when you kill one of their hosts, they don't die, they just go into another body, which was the reason for the white Aerothite and the ability to like summon up a bunch of Aether, and you had to have enough power to destroy this being as he was moving from one body to another or something.
Okay, yeah, that's what that whole storyline was.
Okay. I think we started talking about that on the phone last night, and we never got to the conclusion of that. But that was one of the reasons why we are in spoiler territory. That's why Moon Breda had to sacrifice herself to give enough power to defeat that one Ascian that they killed.
Okay. And so is Nero an Ascian?
No, Nero is a Garlean who's it's like, I think of it like from Star Wars, right? It's the Empire and the Republic, right? The Garleans are the big empire. They've got a lot of big ships and a lot of technology, and they want to take over the world to bring peace, right? Peace through war and oppression. Okay. And so that's what the Garleans are. And so Nero was either like one of the head Garleans or like a general or somebody super high up. And then when you killed, I think it was like his boss or the head of the emperor of the Garleans. Yeah, he kind of disappeared and started doing his own thing because he's, wants power and all that stuff. And so he went off and kind of disappeared for a little bit and then came back into the story because there was a whole, when you beat up that emperor, there's like a whole, the war stopped for a little while because there was like a re-election campaign. And so they pulled all their forces back, did the re-election campaign over the course of like 10 levels, and then the Garleans started coming back into the picture, and stuff evolved from there.
All right, so we got the Garleans trying to wipe us out, and then we have the dragons trying to wipe out Ishgard, right?
Yep.
And then
you'll learn all about the history, the reason for the war, the reason the church said the war took place, and then you'll find out the real reason the war took place.
Oh, okay.
So there's a whole like religion factor, like politics and religion are huge in this game, right? And so there's like the religion that's keeping the truth from people to facilitate the war that benefits them in some way, and blah 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 blah. So,
and where's Alphanod's sister? How come she's disappeared?
Oh geez, that's a spoiler. Well, so she's still alive, spoilers, but she just came back into the picture. I think I'm after Heaven's Ward and I'm in Stormblood. And she just came back in. You find out why she left and why she did what she did, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
But she took 70 levels to come back into the picture, right? And so like, and the thing was, you only saw her for like 5 minutes at the very beginning of the game, and then her and Alphino split. And yeah, it was a character, and you're like, okay, well, clearly I didn't need to care about that person because they've never come back, right? But then she came back, and you found out why, and blah blah blah.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
yeah. I did towards the end have the belief that it's almost like we're playing the rebels in Star Wars at the realm of like now watching. Have you watched Obi-Wan?
Yes, I am caught up as of last night, actually.
But okay, so
spoilers
it's like,
for anybody that hasn't seen that yet.
Yeah, super good. I love it. But at that realm where the rebels are just a glimmer in the eye of creation, right. And I was like, ooh, this would be fun. Like, I wish they made a Star Wars MMO, and maybe the current one does do this. When I played the Star Wars MMO, however many years ago, it was more just standard. I'm a trooper. I'm going to go kill crap. But it'd be cool if they made it more like this, where you're like the rebel base the rebels trying to survive or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because Final Fantasy has captured that. So if you're watching Obi-Wan and you feel like you want that experience, at least at level 60, that's how it feels.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, good
All
game.
Right, now what level are you?
I'm now 60, 67 or 68, I think. And I'm guessing I'm probably midway through. No, I'm at the beginning of Stormblood. I just finished Heaven's Ward and the credits rolled. And then I went down the trade skill rabbit hole for a while, but I'm back.
Keep doing that for 8 more levels, because I did have fun when it was me, you, Clay, and even Greg running around in the dungeon. It was fun because I actually got to do the dungeon mechanics. Like now when I do the dungeon, again, I'm doing the duty roulette, and then just people are so overpowered that I'm really just running around.
Yeah, you only have to half pay attention. Yeah, and I mean, the cool thing is there's all the dungeons from like after A Realm Reborn, you get like a lot of tokens and stuff like that, which then you can use to buy gear, but also buy mounts and collectibles and stuff. So like, if you were like, hey, come run this dungeon that you ran 8 levels ago, I'm still going to be pretty inclined to want to go do that with you, because those tokens are still valuable for me to unlock cosmetic stuff I didn't get because I used it to buy armor along the way, right? But so I think there's plenty of reasons for us to go back. And Clay's still very much playing, and actually he's a little behind me now because he's in the UK this week. So yeah, and
it was fun when he was the tank and I was the healer, because then we all had to figure the mechanics out, and then you would notice that like, oh, Raef, you're pulling aggro too soon, and it was fun to do the mechanics. And there's a part of me that wishes I would have discovered this 15 years ago, but I guess whatever expansion they'll launch after the most recent expansion, then I can be new. And
even then, Endwalker, which is the latest expansion, just came out at the beginning of this year, right?
But I feel like I won't catch up to that for years.
It'll be a while. I mean, we've been playing it for probably 2 months, maybe 3, but we took a big break for V Rising, and I'm just now getting through the first expansion, right? And there's 4 or 5 expansions, I think. And I know there's Stormblood and Shadow Walkers and then Endwalker. I apologize if I got that wrong for people that really love the game. But like, I still have like 3 expansions, and leveling is super slow, at the high level too.
It's slowed right down.
Yeah, which is, I think, is good, because there is so much side activity that like, it's fun to just like, I log in, I don't feel like doing the storyline stuff, I'm just going to go get lost and go find some minions or new mounts or whatever that looks like, right? There's plenty of stuff to do depending on what mood I'm in. Like, I like that. Or too. I don't want to run a dungeon, right? And a dungeon might be holding up my quest progression. So I might just be like, I don't feel like doing that now. I'll log in later and do that. But now I'll do trade skills or something.
Yeah. I want to end with this thought.
It is 12.
It says, I heard who's the creator? Yuri. He's known like the real life person, the creator of this.
Yeah, I don't
he
know
has a name that is like his online name or something that everybody calls him and knows him as. Sorry. Anyway, he's talked about that. I think Endwalker, why it's called Endwalker, is the end of the story.
That could be, maybe that's they're tying it in a bow and then they're going to build a new MMO.
Right.
I don't know.
So I don't know if that means FF Final Fantasy 14 has a new story or if there'll be 15. I don't know what it means, but my point is I'm going to sort of pay attention to that so I can kind of get in on the ground floor and it's not like me just being catch up all the time.
Yeah.
Which again could be 3 years away. I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, and plus two, I think like
Yoshi
P. That sounds familiar now you said that. For me, Final Fantasy is a game that I'm going to binge play for a month. I'll take a break, play another game for a week or two, come back, play I think Final Fantasy is my old slippers that I love to wear around the house. They're super comfortable. I enjoy them, but I really wouldn't wear them out in public because one of them's got duct tape holding it together. Right? So it's my comfortable game that I'm going to go back to. I'm going to play long term, but I need breaks. Like I need that V Rising. I need something else to do. And like Evan's getting into modded Minecraft, so I'm building that server now. So Evan's my son, for those listening. Sorry, he's 6, loves Minecraft, and now he's apparently needs to play modded Minecraft because there's not enough to do in regular Minecraft. So anyway, he's nuts. But anyway, Final Fantasy, it's a great game. I'd recommend it to somebody as long as you understand that disclaimer that 1 through 60 is the slog. You're probably going to play it. You're going to need a break somewhere in there, and then you'll come back to it. And then, when you get to the expansion content, you'll thank me for pushing you through it like Raef did. So anyway.
Yeah, definitely. It is worth it. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, we'll chat later.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@thed6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.